So there are a lot of Christians in the world. We pray that that number is growing. We believe that it is. But there's only a handful of countries that actually still pass laws reflecting Christian teachings. One of those countries, though, is the Central African nation of Uganda. Uganda's legislature just approved a new law. That law criminalizes gay marriage and the homosexual lifestyle and imposes the death penalty for pedophiles. Yes, it's now illegal. It's a crime to be a depraved and demonic, Hershey highway riding, pillow biting butt pirate. And if you touch our kids, we'll kill you. Perfect. Absolutely based. 100% awesome. Now, one purpose of this law, they say, is to decrease the epidemic of HIV, which is widespread in Uganda, just like much of Africa, thanks to weak immune systems and widespread traditional polygamy, among other factors. Another purpose, though, is simple. It's that the last thing that Uganda wants is for Western woke politics to pollute their country and society and completely destroy them in the way that it's completely destroyed America. Well, in response to Uganda's actions, the White House is retaliating sharply. They're threatening to revoke nearly $1 billion in financial, medical, and other aid in response to this bill. Yeah, so it turns out there's a legitimate reason that some people nickname the American regime's values as global homo. Simon Atiba is the White House correspondent for Today News Africa. Now, being a reporter in Africa means facing a lot more actual danger than any of the nonsense our own native reporters complain about. Those people get booted out of a press pool by Donald Trump and they act like it's fascism. Meanwhile, Simon Atiba has been attacked by pirates. He's had an AK-47 held to his head. He's been kidnapped in Nigeria. He's been dumped in the woods after a beating and left for dead. He's been detained in horrible prisons in Cameroon. So now here in our own country, in the free land of America, the Biden administration responds by treating him like a complete piece of garbage. He was recently in a tiff with White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, saying, no doubt accurately, that she and others in the White House look down on him for being black and not wealthy. Well, for that, he's getting kicked out of the White House Correspondents Association. He was recently on Tucker Carlson's show to talk about that. Take a look.
So the White House press secretary doesn't, despite the title, exist to convey information, but to withhold it. And in this White House, the press secretary bans any reporter who asks real questions. And that includes, and it especially includes, a man called Simon Atiba. Simon Atiba is the most famous and we would say finest reporter in all Africa. And that means that Karine Jean-Pierre does not want to talk to him at all. She hasn't called on him in more than 4 months. Now the White House says that Karine Jean-Pierre will not meet with Simon Atiba until next year, which of course means never.
Your thanks for honest reporting and good question asking is you're no longer welcome here.
My questions are actually protected by the First Amendment, which protects, as you know, free speech, freedom of the press, association, and even the right to petition your government to seek redress. But when you do that in the Biden White House, you are being silenced.
Tucker said that you haven't been called on for nearly 4 months. They say, well, we'll just get back with you next year. Tucker insinuated that that means never.
I've not been called on in nearly 8 months. The person covering the White House for Africa, covering U.S.-Africa relations, wasn't called on by the press secretary.
Why are we shunning Africa like this?
The respect is not there, especially because China is expanding, Russia is expanding in influence, and the U.S. seems to be playing catch-up.
Also, Bill Gates seems to do a lot of testing of his bioweapon injections in Africa, experimenting on Africans like they're pieces of garbage or lab rats. In addition to that, why is the United States' biggest export now homosexuality? Why are they so afraid to talk to you about this new law?
There's genuine fear that, what's taking place in the U.S. may actually end up in Uganda. They don't believe in, transgender, especially when it comes to kids. The way they are trying to prevent that is by having this law. I'm personally open-minded. I don't agree with all their actions, but that's what is happening there.
Yeah, certainly you agree that a pedophile should be put to death. Don't touch our kids, we'll kill you. I think that that's an incredibly based and awesome law to have on the books. I don't know why we don't have that law on the books here federally. As a nation, we're not a serious country.
I'm against all crime, and children should be off limits.
It would be better for you to have a millstone tied to your neck and drown in the depths of the sea if you do anything to knock these little ones off their pedestal, to hurt children. What do you think this is really all about, you getting kicked out of the press pool?
If you ask serious questions about, the question that the American people really care about, what happens to you is eventually you are sidelined. A lot of reporters in the room actually send you text messages and in private, but no one can really speak in public because they still want to be in the good book.
We have a literal military invasion happening at our border. You, on the other hand, are an African national who has risked it all to be an upstanding and brave journalist. I mentioned some of the things that you've been through. Your thanks is get out.
We are trying to strengthen those relations as China is expanding. And we are trying to do that with accurate and relevant information. I'm actually the person that you should call on when the president is hosting 50 African leaders in Washington, D.C. When you don't do that, it shows disrespect, not just for me, but it also shows disrespect for the continent of Africa. They are not allowed to discriminate against someone based on where they come from, what they sound like, what they look like. I've done only journalism. As you said, I've been arrested, kidnapped, with a gun to my head, dumped in the woods. Officially, President Biden says, his administration is for the little guy.
We have a mentally ill Rachel Levine that's getting shoved down our throats as, this is normal. This is a mentally ill man dressing as a woman. Don't forget, also in the Biden administration, the kleptomaniac cross-dressing freak show that's stealing purses at the Minneapolis airport. This is shoved down our throat relentlessly. No, accept these people. It's a hate crime. You cannot speak up. You'll get kicked off the internet if you talk unfavorably about these people. Also, we're having systemic racism shoved down our throat nonstop. There is a war on blacks. Aren't they participating in that themselves?
I believe that racism, the way they say, the right and conservative and the Republicans, they are the racists. I'm being discriminated against in the White House, the Biden White House. They will claim that people on the right, they are the racists, they are the bad guy, they are the bigot, any word that you can use. I've seen it. I'm an example of that. And I can say that all those claims are false.
Yeah. We're at war against evil. That's what this is. This is a war of good versus evil. This is 100% a spiritual war, an attack on Christianity.